What up, what up, what up, what up? It is your girl, Melby Cook, and welcome to Hood Conversations. This is where we have real talk about real situations. Just a little piece on my hair. Real talk about real situations that impact our community. So tonight, we're going to get into black and black crime. But before we get into that, I just got to say thank you to all of the 5,000 plus views that we've had over the last 2 months. I started this as a pilot because I just wanted to see what would happen, right? I was in the house bored and trying to figure out how can I bring what I normally do in the community to a platform like this? So I'm just thankful for all of you, right? So tonight, we're going to get into this, right? And we're going to get into this in a way that I want to talk more about solutions. Because when I hear what about black on black crime, especially as it combats things like, the Black Lives Matter movement or police brutality, there's like, oh, but you kill your own. So what about black on black crime? As it's an excuse. But I'm going to address the excuse because I feel like there are people working every day to make sure that we are trying to see some of the murders that occur in the cities. And we're going to talk about some of the myths. We're going to talk about some of the issues. We're going to talk about some of the things that always pop up, like stop snitching and nobody in the hood really cares and people don't tell on their own. That's where I think I want to start, right? But like most days, I cannot have these conversations alone because I don't really like to hear myself talk that much. On top of it, I need to bring people that may be a little smarter than me in some aspects, also bring people on that have lived this, right? Because a lot of times when we're having this conversation about what about black on black crime, we got people having the conversation that won't even pull up, that are not going to see about their cousins, their nieces, their nephews, but yet it's so popular as soon as somebody kills us. So I'm going to invite in my homeboy. You guys have all met him before, Mr. Devin Coleman. How are you, sir? You doing
How
great
you
today?
doing?
I'm
I'm
well.
listen, I'm doing good. I've been grinding. I've been overcoming and working towards living my dream.
That's all you can do, right? Because that's how
Yup.
you kind of. Because can I just say this, Devin? At one
Go
point in
ahead.
time, I was black on black crime. It was all over me. But we'll talk about that later. We'll get into those stories a little later, right? Because people have a tendency to think that it has a look or it has a feel,
Right.
right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So we'll talk about that a little later. But I just want you to take the moment just to reintroduce yourself to those who are watching. Tell them a little bit about you, a little bit about your background, and what you're doing out here in the streets.
All right, cool. So man, I was one of the ones that said it couldn't happen to me. Like, and whatever that was, it can't happen to me. I didn't take advice. I took things for granted. Um, and I thought I made it. So I went to college, and college end up catching up. First degree felony. So I'm looking at a life sentence. Got blessed, didn't get life, but had to go to prison, right? And at that moment, I was like, what am I gonna do? Like, I don't want this to be my life. The stuff that I saw inside, I'll never forget, and I don't want to repeat it, right? So what happened is I was like, what am I gonna do about it? I had to tell a story. So I started writing, published a couple books, I started speaking, and my goal was to show people that have been in that position that your life isn't over, right? But here are the steps to turn your life around. And then try to shed light on individuals headed down that path. Like, you don't have to head down that path. A wise man learned from the mistakes of others. And that turned into a speaking platform, a program for youth, and working with fathers.
Love it. Love it. So let's jump in, right? So let's talk about what do you believe some of the causes are? We can go with causes first of black on black crime. And I'm going to put in quotes because I hate the title, but I feel like it's such a common message that when people hear it, they automatically think, we out here killing each other and shooting each other, all of that good stuff. But I hate the label, but we're going to just address it as that. And I'm going over my own issues.
Can we talk about the message first?
Yep. Go ahead.
All right. So I think the reason it's so prevalent is because we hear it so often.
Mm-hmm.
And we hear it so often because somebody wants us to be desensitized. All crime in this country happens in close proximity because of the reasons for crime. So whatever neighborhood you in, the person who commits the offense versus the person that gets hurt are more than likely going to be in the same affinity group. You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
yeah, they're gonna be in the same affinity group for some odd reason, though. Whether we looking at movies, whether we hearing music, looking at TV, even the news, they want to inundate us with images of black people hurting black people, and very rarely show images of black people loving on each other.
So let's talk about that for a minute. So I think it's a couple of different reasons, right? So the first one is if I can make the problem about them and not about me, not about something that I can relate to, then we don't necessarily have to address it or fix it, right?
Right,
So if I'm making the narrative that these people, quotes again, and these particular communities don't want to save themselves, they don't want out, they don't want to talk about it, they don't want to tell anyone what's happening in their community, they are aiding and abetting fugitives, then we don't have to go in and do anything different, right? If they don't want anything different, then why should we want anything different for them? And the problem with that is one, we are not in the mass media like we need to be. So when we're looking for stories and stories are looking to be posted, like we don't have people there who understand the messaging and that understands that that narrative can be false. We also don't present stories that people care about. So I was looking at a young lady by the name of Sherry Williams. She's a professor, she's a journalist, and she made a statement. And what she said was a lot of times you do see us in the community when murders happen, when people are died senselessly, you see us marching, we see us cleaning up, we see campaigns being ran. But the issue is that we can't get the media to care. And so if we're in a position where people don't necessarily look like us, and we have editors that are like, what's the big deal? What's the story? It's just another issue with black on black crime. And they
right.
report the numbers because the numbers are sexy, but they never report the solutions or the things that people do internally. But most of the time it's because they don't know, because they're not connected to that community.
I agree 100%.
And so it's like, this is why I think it's so important for us to get into spaces that were not necessarily designed for us, or spaces that, we don't necessarily flood. And so even though I love entrepreneurship, you know what I mean? That's the thing, it's a passion. And I do believe that's the way that you can get financially free. However, I don't want to discredit the person who chooses to go to school and wants something different and wants a different type of career, right? So that we can get in spaces and get into rooms so that we can make change and impact. And so that happens when we're able to control the narrative. And let's might as well just grow into this whole stop stitching thing, right? Because we hear all the time that black folks don't snitch, and that cannot be further from the truth. I can go to any correctional facility across the United States of America, and guess what I'm going to find? 5,000 snitches out of 7,000 that's locked up on the yard. Like it. That's not a thing. You can go home, ask your homeboy, ask the dude up the street, like how many times either he's been locked up because someone snitched on him, or when he got granted those papers and he just don't really want to tell you, go look at his court records, right? It
Right.
happens every day.
You're right. You're right. Now watch this. I want to take a step back and then take
Okay.
three forward. I think people have popular, like made the word snitching popular, right? In terms of the general public, if you go to work every day, right, and you renting somewhere, or you got a house, you bought you a car, like you live in your version of the American dream, and somebody does something to you, you're supposed to call the police. Like you're a tax-paying citizen, they get paid from tax dollars. Like that's what they're there for, right? And I think we let the word snitch travel into what I would call like our mainstream lives. I think the origin of it, or at least what it meant to me when I ran the streets, was this: if you and I plan to go do something that we know illegal going into it, right? We know what the potential consequences is. We weigh the risk and reward, and we go do this thing, and I get away, and you tell on me, like that's snitching. Like you ain't supposed to do that. You violated the code, because we knew what we was getting into when we got into it to do it. But when the old lady down the street, the young girl down the street, like that's what they supposed to do. They supposed to call the people that they pay with their tax dollars.
Agreed. And so what's funny is though, it happens both ways, and that's not what we talk about, right? So like
Right.
this the narrative that the hood doesn't talk. I don't know what hood these people live in, but soon as something jumps off around the way, everybody has an understanding of or has a story about who did it. Oh, I heard he was beefing with such and such. Oh, hold on. I'm like, so those officers that are in the street, y'all don't hear about the somebodies. Y'all don't get these leads. If you are in your neighborhoods policing your neighborhoods, you don't see this message.
That's what it is. They're not listening. Because you're right, people talking, and then cameras everywhere, right? So everything getting captured. You look at Instagram, you look at YouTube, you see fight videos, you see it's all kind of stuff. So I don't think people listening. But watch this. If we talking about good old fashioned like police work, it was based on investigation. Like you get paid to go into an environment and investigate. Like if somebody go to court, they present evidence. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think a whole case shouldn't be based on whether or not you go somewhere and somebody like actually say something to you.
So
Like you supposed.
I don't even think one that it's. I agree that it starts with investigation, right?
Right.
And but I don't even think sometimes the investigation is so hard, right? And I'll give you an example. All of our officers in our neighborhood knew who did what and how things moved, who moved what, who worked for who, right? When
Right.
they get tired or they feel like you've crossed the line, then now they're gonna come get you. Or when they feel like the crime was too big, now Officer Friendly is gonna show up and do his job and do what he's supposed to do. Um, but the crazy thing is I've also seen situation where Officer Friendly applies pressure. So if me and Devin are having a disagreement or something's going on, I'm gonna pull Devin up and bring him down to the station. I'm gonna pull Mel up and bring her down to the station, and I'm gonna fuel a fire, right? So it's
Right.
like when people say like you can't get them off, like some of these people off of the street that are really like out here being malicious, doing all kinds of craziness that are truly terrorizing our hoods, right?
Right.
I don't believe it, but I do believe it. Things like let's talk about overcrowding. Let's talk about we don't have enough representatives in the jails and the legal system being backed up, so you can't get in some places for 2 years. Let's talk about some of those things where people sweep under the rug and say people just don't snitch. Let's talk about the fact that you took the young man into custody, but because you want him for a larger charge, you let him go. You play like this cat and mouse game with him to see what he's going to do once you let him go. You give him three months here, then you release him back out there because you're trying to catch him on the murder charge eventually to give him 55 years. Like those are the politics that we don't discuss.
You're right. That's entrapment. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that go on, man. Or you slap slap them on the wrist a couple times and then give them a whole boatload of time. It's one thing though that you said earlier that I wanted to circle back on. Like we got to talk about the conditions. So a friend of mine, Desmond, he said something and it made me think about things a little bit different years ago. He was like, people will put two pit bulls into a cage, right? And make it where only one of them can come out alive and get mad because they fight to the death. And then people watching to blame the pit bulls and not blame the people that put them in said environment, right?
Agree.
And that's happening a lot in our community. Like you got people that live in communities that no longer have resources. Like I look at some of the communities that I grew up on, I can literally count the amount of businesses that's still on that strip. I can see where like some of the houses done got tore down. I can see where some of the big businesses got tore down. So it done slowed down commerce. And if people don't have jobs in the immediate area, if they can't, if they don't have access to reliable transportation, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then they go into survival mode, they tend to prey on each other.
So this is where even when so let's talk about the conditions for a minute. So if you put me in a spot where I don't have lots of opportunity, you put me in a spot where the aggression is at a thousand, you put me in a spot where the finances are low, and all I see is hustling. I'm going to do and participate in some of those things, right?
Yep.
And so when that happens or that occurs, like you said, people want to blame the people for what is current, the conditions that live within those communities. And this is where I think some of those solutions come in. Like, how do you provide opportunity? Like, how do you create more jobs? Not only create more jobs, but raise awareness about those positions being out there. Raise awareness about how to buy back some of those homes. Raise awareness about how to get some of those funds for like businesses. And I also have to point out that most of the people that are committing these crimes are 15 to 23. What was
Right.
your mental like at 15 to 23? You already have an inflated sister ego. You already don't have emotional maturity. You already don't have the need to want guidance, right? And so then you put all of these worst case scenarios around them. What do you expect to happen?
That's a good point. To take it one step further, those 15 to 23 year olds, in our environment, they growing up in single parent households where the one parent that they do have is working two jobs or three, not home at all. I think a key in changing that, at least for me, it was exposure, right? I think whatever we can see and start believing that it can happen, then you can work on our mind to get us to work towards it. But if all I saw was poverty, or lack, I'm gonna think like having access, that's a foreign language. I'll take it a step further. When I got out of prison, um, I had a cousin that looked me in my face, told me my life was over. Because in our environment, people that had felony convictions had a rough road, and that's how they ended up going back. I ended up getting involved with politics, organizing, and traveling. And when I went to different states, I saw people that looked like me come from a similar background and had the same felony convictions that's thriving, that were married, had degrees, had homes and businesses, and they were making a good living. Now, when I saw that it could happen and built relationships with those people, even though I went back to that same environment, I knew it was possible and I could start working towards
One of the things that I give my parents, mom and dad, a whole lot of credit for is the exposure piece. Because I have being able to see people that look like me, that talk like me, that are able to get out here and like kill the game in different realms and different aspects, like that was everything for me, right? So you
it.
couldn't tell me what I couldn't be. There wasn't a sense of hopelessness because I saw it, right, with my own eyes. And it's crazy because like when I'll look at all of the resources. Let's just take Baltimore City, like all of the resources Baltimore City has as far as its young people and exposure. Sometimes though the issue with it, Devin, is like I don't see you in me. So if you can take me, and it's nice sometimes that you've now taken me on a trip. It's nice, or like, you know, whether it's to the museum or to DC or to like all of these other places, but I have to be able to connect myself with what it is that I see. And so that's why I think it's so important for us to be in those places and showing the messages. Like, give you an example. I get all the time. Like when I post a little Adidas, I love me an Adidas jacket, right? And I post me all the time in an Adidas jacket or jeans and some sneakers. And people will be like, you know, I don't know if that's on brand. And I'm like, first of all, I am the goddamn brand. Let's just start there. The second thing is I need kids who look like me, and I don't change my language when I don't cuss, but I don't change my language when I go in and talk to like youth and young adults. Why? Because they need to be able to see themselves. They need to see how I really talk when I come home. It is okay for me to have my nice little voice when I'm in my business meetings and I got to get people together, but I need them to see it. I'll give you an example. So I caught the train. This is when I was working for Johns Hopkins. I caught the train to work every day, right? And so I wear, and I'm going to throw this out there because I wear jeans and t-shirts to, at that point, a six-figure job, right? That's my attire, hair back in a ponytail, right? So I'm on the train, jeans and t-shirt, right? I get a phone call because I'm running slightly late. I get on the phone on the train. It's like a group of students sitting by me. I'm like, hey, no, I'm giving orders. I'm like, no, I need you to do this, whatever. No, make sure you go back and like, no, call me tomorrow. Make sure like so they hear me. And so I hang up the phone. The young lady said, what do you do? It was a whole different level of conversation, right? She's, what do you do? I'm sitting up there literally on a early morning trip telling these kids like I was career day, right? Of what I do, how to stay in contact with me, get your grades up, call me later. Two of the little girls called later because they seen me and them. And so for them, it was like, okay, she ain't this bougie, stuck up chick, right? And I'm not saying just because you wear certain things, but I'm saying is the way we converse matters, and having multiple images of a thing matters,
Right.
because that starts the level of exposure that they need to even want to dream and think about going outside of the box.
You know, again, I agree 100%. And hearing you talk in my mind, I just heard three words like keep it real.
Yeah.
Like we got to keep it real as adults, because a lot of times people will make it to a certain level and don't talk about the whole journey. They talk about the success, right? And you will have somebody trapped in the environment that they came from. And it's like, if you don't talk about the journey, you climb the ladder and pull the ladder up. Throwing the rope back is giving them the game. So I went and did a speaking engagement, and I asked how real can I be with the young men and young women. It was like, be real. They need it because they in this dangerous age group where it could literally go any way based on the environment they in, right?
Yep.
And I was talking, and they asked me who I looked up to, and I said Jay-Z, Jeezy, and T.I. And some of the facilitators looked, the other one, they looked at me, and I was like, yeah, let me explain why though. I'm fresh off a felony conviction, right? If you bring a lawyer in to talk to me, I live in Florida, so that's cool. But based on the laws at that time, an ex-felon can't sit to take the Florida bar. So I can't be a lawyer. You get what I'm saying?
I do.
But when I hear like Jay-Z come from Marcy Projects, the things that he's endured and overcame, and see where he at. When I hear about or see the journey that T.I. made or Jeezy, that number one, that eliminates my excuse because it shows that it's possible. Number two, it provides a roadmap for me. And as I grow, my role models may or may not change, but now I have a bridge. It was something you told me maybe like 2 years ago, that I had the ability to walk in both sets of shoes, so I could be in my old neighborhood and convey a message, as well as going into a boardroom or into like a legislative session and articulate a message on behalf of my people. And what I learned is value in being authentic to yourself, because you don't know who watching.
So true. And so the minute that you start losing that level of authenticity, and you start perpetuating, other images, other people, turning into other people, you lose your credibility, and you lose it on both sides. So if I go into a boardroom and I'm pretending to be, all stuffy, tight together in a way that's like, unrelatable, whatever, um, I lose the message there, and lose what I need to convey there, and I lose the work that needs to be done there, right? And when I say in a boardroom, I'm not talking about necessarily for business. I'm talking about now I'm going to represent my people among a bunch of people who don't look like me, right? So I need them to see both sides of myself, so that when I'm in that room, they understand that I am connected to my folks still and very relevant. So when I speak, I'm not speaking from your same stature. And then I also need them to know, but I know enough about, whatever's presented in the world, the room, whether we're talking about like morbidities, whether we're talking about violence in our communities, whatever it is. I need you also to know that you're not going to also pull like cloth over my eyes and you just be able to get away and say whatever you want. So I need to be able to tangle with you on both ways. And I don't think that people understand how critical that is to our growth, right? So the first thing that we kind of like put out there is how do we kind of combat some of this is one is exposure, right? And then the second thing I think is understanding our presence. And so my dad used to say a person who has one foot in academia and then has another foot in the street can never be stopped, right? And the
Right.
reason is because you know how to maneuver in both lanes effectively. And so if us that actually know really how to move in both lanes has been exposed to both audiences and knows intricately what goes on around the way, we need to be able to use that voice in rooms that matter.
You know, not only do we need to use that voice, we got to like start like doing the multiplier effect.
True.
I've seen in some instances like a brother or sister make it and they want to be the only one, and then they say the burden too heavy to carry because you weren't meant to carry it by yourself. Man, I used to go and get the good news and bring it back home and let my people know not only is it possible, I'm like, just like you said, it's the same rules, right? It's walking with morals and values, integrity, and trying to be the best at what you do. The risk and reward ratio a little different. Like in the streets, you violate some of those rules, man, you could like literally lose your life or your freedom, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But on the right side of the law, it's almost like no fear because you've been conditioned to be a survivor in condition to be an overcomer.
That's true. Got two things to that. One, like don't talk that shit to me about you create opportunities and you a leader if you can't create other leaders. Like
True.
that goes literally in one ear and out the other when you're talking to me. When you come to me and you're like, yo, I'm a boss, I'm doing this, da da da. How many bosses did you create? Right? Like if you can't sit and have a conversation with me about how many bosses that you create, it's irrelevant. Like, so we can talk about money all day. I say this all the time. Money's not hard to get. Money is easy to come by, especially if you ain't got no damn morals, values, or integrity and you're only looking out for yourself. Money's not hard to get, right? But what are you doing to inspire and to create other leaders,
Right.
right? And sometimes that doesn't mean that you out here and you like, I don't have to, I choose to sometimes, but I don't have to be on every block speaking and talking and drilling a message in someone's head, right? Because I naturally embrace people because that's my thing, right? If I'm living a certain way, you're going to want to know how I got what I got. And so, like, I'll say all the time, like in these social media streets, I appreciate y'all. But when I'm in these streets, most of the time, whether it's online or offline, I'm starting with my family
Right.
because they know me. So they know what I go home and do. They see me how I pull up, right? And they see what I pull up and they see how I come home living, not just the material things, the peace that comes with it. They see I don't do nonsense. And
Right.
so because of that, they're connected to me. They know that it's possible. If I can take and create 10, duplicate, not me, but parts and portions of me and 10, 15 other people that then go do it in 10, 15 other people, yo, we win it. Like even when it comes to the way that I run business, the reason that I choose to speak to like those consultants and those speakers and those entrepreneurs, right? Is because if I can get 30 of you in a room, one thing for sure is I trust me. And I trust my ability to be able to create other leaders, to be able to authentically share, unapologetically share every lesson that I've learned. I'm a killer when it comes to this business shit, right? And that's not for me just to say, which is why I don't tout it all the time, but I'm a killer when it comes to this shit. So anything and anybody that connects to me, we're going to have a 5-minute conversation and I promise you're going to leave better than you came because that's what I pride myself on. You know what I mean? And that
Right.
ability to be able to go out because we don't, I can't change us. So I need the Devons. I need the people that don't look sexy necessarily also on social media. I need the people that's like, yo, I'm just trying to figure it out. Because if I can be that one seed of hope for them and show that one thing that you out here hoarding because you feel like you're supposed to get paid every time that you talk, or now that you didn't change your zip code, you feel like you're too good to go back to where you came from? You scared of your own people? I don't have that problem. And I know that. So that's my space that I'm going to dominate and stay authentic to who I am and what my mission is so that I can recreate leaders.
in tune with the solutions, I think we need to take a look at this us versus them mentality in our community. So for example, when I mean us versus them, I remember a time where people actually articulated the fact that they didn't know they could have an intelligent conversation with somebody with a prior felony conviction. And I'm like, wow. And they look like me. And I had to think bigger than me because that person was a decision maker, right? Number one, I felt good that they felt comfortable enough in our relationship to say that to me, right? So I didn't get defensive. I was like, yeah, you can't believe the hype. It's a lot of people that done been inside that have intellect and talent. They just don't know how to monetize it. They don't know how to tap into it. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
It's never been nurtured.
Right, right. And because for a lot of people, they've been surviving. Watch this. I'm raising my daughter, and I'm strategic and intentional about nurturing her interests. She loved art, so I don't know much about it. I'm learning it going through this process with her, but I let her try any and every type of art because I don't know what it'll lead to. I see so many young people that have gotten older that used to like or want to try certain things and never got into it because life dictated that they had to become providers so early. And they lost touch with who they were and they wear it on their shoulders in their face, right? And those type of people, without even knowing it, can be cynical and bitter and destroy the dreams of the next generation before they even take root.
And I think that is so true. And I think it happens when a certain level of hopelessness sets in. And then also when we normalize things that aren't normal. There are
Right,
normal, right? But it could be so much more. And so like you hear all those the little cheesy like TV shows and movies that be like, no, you gonna stay here and you ain't gonna be shit because I ain't shit kind of like mentality in the
right,
movies and like stories, whatever. But it's real, right? Because it also produces a certain level of fear. Like people don't like to fail. People don't feel like to feel like I put all of this energy in this one thing and it never manifests to anything. But it also comes down to I have to survive. So you said something critical about being a provider early. So if you are in a situation where finances are challenging, money ain't coming through and windows and doors falling off trees, none of that's happening, right? And you have to survive. I know some of the hardest working people that live round the way that work 16, 17 hours a day, literally, but still can't make ends meet because the jobs and opportunities that they have been exposed to don't pay them any money. And so, like, when you have situations like that, then you add on things like being in a single parent home, right? A young man at some point is going to want to take care of his mama. And a lot of times people be like, well, there's so many other choices and whatever. Can I be honest? I didn't put my son round the way because he couldn't go to the corner and get easy money. Because guess what? He got his mama in him, right? So he got that need to like want to hustle and do something different. So my son would have been a Tristan of the block. I don't know if y'all ever seen Blue Hill Avenue. My son would have been the Tristan. He would have been the one orchestrating all of the things. And I would have had to like, be all out here in my feelings. But a lot of those things happen. So it's like you talk about what you wouldn't do, but you don't know what you would do until you are in a situation that you can't feed your kids. You don't know
true,
what
true.
you would do until you get into a situation where you've been trying to get a job for 2 years and nobody will hire you. You don't know what you would do if you had to sleep on the concrete. You don't know what would look like food once you ain't had food in about 5 weeks or 5 days or whatever. You know what I mean? So like when
Right.
people, the people who are perpetuating these messages about, oh, I don't understand it. They just savages, they're thugs, they're this. Like, I want to see what you act like, B, when you can't feed yourself.
I'm gonna tell you something. You're right. I think as leaders, the challenge is to ask the next question, like to go a layer deeper. Because a lot of times some of these solutions people come up with topical. They don't address the problem, they just cover it up,
That's right.
right? That won't need
Hmm.
to be flushed out. You know what I'm saying? Stitched up and taken care of. It's a lot of trauma. So watch this. I remember seeing like I would see stuff in the news, hear people talking about like kids carrying guns to school, right? And you're not supposed to carry a gun to school. You're not supposed to have a firearm if you didn't buy it from the store and it's licensed and registered per how it is in your state, right? Why these kids got guns in school? Let's just lock the kids up. And you can lock those children up, but you didn't address the reason why they had to have or felt that they had to have the gun in school. Maybe it was because they felt they needed to be protected, right? I've
Hmm.
seen even in my city where you intermingle schools, right? You intermingle schools, you put neighborhoods together that are literally at war with each other on the street. So the term they use now is the ops. You don't put these people in this environment and they at a disadvantage. So they feel like they gotta protect themselves by any means necessary. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not justifying it. What I'm saying is we need to deal with the fact that these kids don't feel safe in their neighborhoods. They don't feel safe going to school. They don't feel safe going to the store. And that threat to them is very real. And then when you add the fact, like what you said earlier, the brain don't fully develop till they in a mid-20s, the resolutions that they gonna come up with not gonna be as thought out as somebody 10 to 15 years older than them.
It's definitely not going to be logical. And so let's talk about that as a solution, right? So, sorry, I go sneeze. Ooh, excuse me.
Like,
So let's talk about that as a solution, right? So, which is very real. When you look at the Chicago's, I'm going to use Chicago because they always get in the middle of the spotlight as far as like kids walking from one neighborhood on their way going to school, not feeling protected, right? So, when do us grown-ups, right? What happens if we would find them safer ways to get to school? What would happen if we would take them in and be able to like provide safe spaces on their route? If the law officials are not going to do it, do we start taking things like that in their own hand? Here's what I feel about a 15 year old is a 15-year-old is a 15-year-old. And so like I remember one time um being on the train again, and little boy got out of pocket or whatever. I corrected him. Why? Because he's 15.
right,
You can't look like my son, and I'm fearful of you. And the argument is normally, well, he might have a gun and he might have this and he might be that. He's 15. And so it's looking and finding ways to converse with them that is relatable and that makes sense. I have yet to be disrespected in my 5 year stint. Why? Because I'm not necessarily trying to change you. I'm trying to make you rethink your decisions. I'm trying to
right,
like get in your head a little bit because you're 15 or 14 or 13 or 18, right? And a lot of times they have not had even people who care enough. So what am I going to do? If I think that you don't care about me, I'm going to take matters in my own hands and figure out how to make this thing happen and work for myself. Because I'm still now going to feel unprotected. You can take away the gun, but then now what you going to give me? Or now what's
right,
going to happen? Like we talk about like 2020 as if like 1990 never happened. Like what was it? Lean on Me was a real thing. They had gun detectors in schools as a real thing. So when
right.
we passing judgment and like, oh, this is like a new problem, it's really not. It's really not a new problem. So when we were going through those situations or when we were presented with them, what would have worked for us? And a lot of times we don't take the time to go back into the mind of what we were like at 15, 17, 18, 19, 20, and what would have registered and what would have worked.
In addition to that, I think that's when like the OGs got to step up, right? And think about like all the loss and pain that you endured and be like, do I want the next generation to endure that? Like, can we create a path to let the ones that want to do right, like actually have an opportunity to do right? And look
Agreed.
at models where that happened. Like I remember listening to a Nipsey song, Dedication, with Kendrick, and then hearing the music that he made with YG. Like that was new because
Yeah.
in their environment that doesn't happen.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And they talked about the era that um Snoop grew up in and Top Dog grew up in, where it would have been very hard to make that happen. And they've done some things, something happened that now these young brothers that got the talent can actually get together and work together and then reinvest in the environment.
I was looking at something actually that Snoop said, which was just that. He was like, he made it cool for gangsters to now rap. Like when he was coming up, there wasn't so many avenues where you took dudes off of the street and created an opportunity through music and through rap for them to be able to really provide for themselves and their family. And then as time progressed, you add technology and things like that to it. So my question is for anyone watching is, what is that for you? What is that one thing that you do well and that you have a level of expertise in that you can show someone else how to do, like you said, that really wants to change? But a lot of times we too damn scared to go get the ones who really want the change. Like we talk about these kids being weak and like they're emotional and shit like that. But let's be honest, like we are some weak ass adults. Like it should never be a case, and I'm gonna say this again, probably about 15 more times after this, where you are afraid of a 14 or a 15-year-old. It should never be the case where like this is why I need, and this is why I feel so strongly about going into like prisons and going in to do the reentry work, because I need the dudes that's not scared. Because these dudes out here that's really be fearful and scared to be in these streets, y'all starting to piss me off a little bit. Like
Right.
we can't get our kids back when you in the house talk about something. Well, I ain't got time to be going down there. I go down there and I'm gonna get myself into something. He's 15. Talk to him. Nobody said you need to go and persuade him to a whole different lifestyle and be his daddy. But can you just have a conversation about what you've been through, what you've experienced, and give him some little nuggets or a blueprint in order to help him get out? And he may not apply it today. He might get locked up and have time to think about it. But it's your job to at least sow the seed.
I'm gonna tell you what attracted me to fatherhood. So yes, I work with young brothers, because I think it's important to show a model or at least shed some light on exposure. I like working with the older brothers though. When I hear brothers be like, man, them kids tripping, them boys off the chain, I be like, if they off the chain, if they tripping, it's our fault. Them our children. Like
Yeah,
my age, I have friends that have kids that's 18, 19, 20 years old, them our kids. So that means we dropped the ball. That means we weren't there. Now, if we look at the reasons why we weren't there, in some instances, like you said, people moved away and didn't come back, right? Some people passed away and they friends ain't step up and they stayed like they were supposed
true.
to do. You know what I'm saying? And then in some instances, we've allowed systems to separate us. For example, the brother go and have to go do some time. He want to come back home and help his family. He want to be involved. His ego in the way. Now, he got to check his ego, but his ego in the way, his pride in the way. He don't know what to do or how to do it. But even if he did, if she's getting assistance, he can't live in the house with
True.
her. And because he hasn't built his skill set or learned how to monetize the skill set, he might not be in a position to replace the income, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at anything, listen to anything, for a large group of people, they think the value of a man is tied to what he could provide monetarily. So he thinks that he don't have any value, not understanding that his child just needs him there. They need to hear the voice. They need to see the example. You know what I'm saying? And then you got time to work all the other stuff out later. So we need to create a bridge by which these brothers can get involved in the community, man, break some of these barriers down. And then guess what? The mother may not, she ain't got to carry the load all by herself. Some of our
That's true.
sisters tired, man. They tired.
Oh, so ladies, do not throw daggers, because I got time today. But sometimes, yes, we are tired, and yes, we do get into situations where we are expected to like carry the weight of everyone else, right? But sometimes I don't think we do our personal work to be able to ease some of that weight. And the reason that some of these men feel like the only thing that they bring to the table is money is because that's what we're taught to
Right.
believe, right? Those are the type of relationships that we end up getting connected to. And sometimes it's because we don't understand the value of a father or a male, period, because we've never had one. We've never had a male that was introduced to our life that had value. And so when that happens, you telling me to value this dude that's out here working and making $5 an hour, and I feel like he can't. I don't even think that's a thing anymore. Let's go up, like making $9 an hour, and he can't contribute to the household, right, from a financial stance. And you want me to let him see, like my kid? I'm not gonna let him see over here to see him because he take care of him whenever he feel like it. And it's all of these other things where we don't think about the entirety of the situation. We don't think about the wholeness of the kid. We don't think about the example. Or sometimes we switch up. He was in the streets when you were with him, when you slept with him, when you brought the baby home, right? And I understand the fear of not wanting to expose your kids to things that, could possibly get them harmed, right? But there has to be a level of maturity and balance to figure out what that common ground is. Like my baby daddy, they have a W-2 for most of his life, right? Most of my child's life. However, he never said anything wrong to my son, right? But I granted him the opportunity. Like I would say to him, and we would talk about things, though, Devin, like, nah, where you staying at these days? I don't know if I'll be able to send my son at this age to you for 2 weeks or
Right.
a month, because I told you, I was trying to keep him from not going to the corner finding stuff that could possibly get him rich in 2 days. Like I needed not to do that. So we had to have some real adult conversations about, okay, so tell me when you're going to visit your mom. I'm gonna send him down there to visit your mom. And y'all could go down there and stay with your mom together. Or if I'm honest, there's times where I'd be like, I'm gonna send them to you when you here. And sometimes I footed the bill. Right? I know it sounds crazy to some ladies that like, shit, I ain't gonna do that. Like he should have paid his child support. That's up to him. But the relationship to me was more important because he needed to see who he was as a man, even though he will not be his father. There's traits of his father that are inside of him that he needed to be connected to, and he needed to see his father as a person and not the person on a rap sheet. And so there has to be a level of maturity, and I think the disconnect comes because that level of maturity is not always there.
What you said is like it's valuable. I remember it was a time like many moons ago in my life where I didn't want to bring my daughter where I was when she was younger. So she ain't come to my crib. We'll spend the night at my cousin's house or my sister's house. And then after that, man, I take her home. You know what I'm saying? To
Yeah.
go back and do what I was doing because, like, you're right, the man and the father and mother have to be cognizant of the environment. Let me tell you something though. But I got tired of that, right? And that led to me fully turning the curve. Like my godson was playing part one of football. My nephew playing part one of football. They sisters riding with me to the games, right? So that new level of responsibility made the decision for me because I can't have them in certain type of environments and I can't control everything. So I had to make a decision. And the decision that I made was to leave everything it was and fully commit to being the man that they needed me to be. And that's why I'm able to exist in this space today. But also I'm able to empathize with the brothers that's dealing with that dilemma, because some people that don't understand that life or what comes with it think that today I can say I'm not running the streets no more and tomorrow I got a new life. The streets ain't that forgiving. You
Life
karma
ain't
more.
that forgiving. I was just about to say karma
Right,
isn't
right.
that forgiving. That is a process that takes time
Take
to
time.
happen. And
I
go ahead.
go ahead.
I think because first you have to it's this whole thought process of what do I want to do, right? And so, and I'll say this, being connected to many men and women who are really about that life, right? They go through a process of not knowing what they want to do first. Like, I'm tired of doing this. I'm tired of this being my everyday and my lifestyle. But what do I do now? Right? then all of those things that you talked about come into play. Like the streets are not going to just forget that I was this person like yesterday. So then now I have to figure out, how do I phase myself out of a certain lifestyle? How do I pull back from family and friends? And then once I do that, what am I going to do next? Like, I know I don't want to do this, but I ain't about to necessarily, I didn't go to school. I didn't go to college. I didn't, you know what I mean? I don't have no engineer degree. I don't know anybody that's really making it or doing it that's willing to talk to me. So what do I do next? And I think that process alone is drawn out, like, for some people, years.
Listen, and that's the key. So come back up. You talked about opportunities, like we talked about people putting economic opportunities in the community, right?
Mm-hmm.
I stepped away from advocacy for a piece of time, and this is why. It's hard when you don't have access, right?
Yeah.
It's harder when you now have access and you're not prepared for the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a group of people advocating for individuals in a particular environment, but weren't training them. So I could bring a job into the neighborhood, but the members of the community have to be ready. This isn't 1988 or 1995. So
Mm-mm.
they're gonna have to know how to turn on the computer. They're gonna have to know how to run a spreadsheet, how to answer the phone. They're gonna have to know how to talk to people, because I got you here because these people coming in here buying the product, right?
Yeah.
If you stop them from coming to buy the product, I don't need you here anymore. Like
Yeah.
all that type of work has to happen, and that takes time because that's a mindset shift. So we got to prepare our people for the opportunities as well. That's why I think we need to destigmatize um like personal development, because people think that, like, oh, I don't need to improve myself. I'm good now. You might be good, but do you want to be great? You know what
That's
I'm
true.
saying? Do you want to be great? Because things change. Like I asked the group, I say, what type of phone you got? Oh, I got the iPhone 11. Oh, I got the Samsung 10. You got the Samsung 10? Okay, so that means they had a Samsung 1, made improvements. It went to Samsung 2, the Galaxy 3, 4, same with the iPhone. And they top notch around the world, right? But it was
Yeah.
always room for improvement. And they weren't afraid to take the feedback and better the product. And we got to make it well, our people know it's okay to enhance where you at. It's room for improvement.
But so let's go back on, like, preparing for the opportunities, right? Because back to that oxygen mask, right? So I can't breathe financially. I'm already working all of these hours and expending all of this time just to make sure that my house stays afloat. And so, in order for me now to get new skills, which are normally between 8 and 5 every day, if I do go to a workforce development program or something like that, right? I'm going to get these new skills at a time that I'm normally supposed to be at work. So, where do I make the transition? A lot of the times when you're in that situation, you don't make a transition until now you don't have a job, right? And
Right,
then now I still have to invest. And I'm speaking more, I guess, towards the women too. Like most of the time, the women that are in these situations, you're a CNA at the hospital, you know what I mean? Like you are like working fast food or retail or something like that, which has crazy hours just trying to survive. And so like now I want new skills and I want to do something different, but I can't really miss these checks. And so like there has to be an explanation of why I need this or feeling like I'm working towards a target. What I love that a lot of workforce development programs have begun to do is they'll pay you to go learn and to get
right,
additional skills, right? And so sometimes I think that needs to be expressed a little bit more. Like you come in, you do this, you get that. This is what you can possibly get. Back to seeing the examples though, right? And understanding a need for it. Even like within, at one point in time where I'm from, they had houses that they were building, like a urban development program, and the criteria was that you had to make $17,000 a year. They came in, built the homes, had to stop building because a lot of people that were trying to apply didn't make $17,000 a year.
yeah,
So it's like that preparation is everything. So before you just dump and put opportunities in there, you have to make sure that you're doing some work ahead of time to prepare the people that live there to be able to take advantage of it. And making it so popular or like so widespread that they understand that the opportunities, how they benefit them, and where to get the services. A lot of times we'll just show up, and I love my nonprofits, and this is why I'm going to say that we need to be volunteering with any kind of way we can, especially professional skills. A lot of nonprofits that are really doing great work, you never hear about them because they don't have marketing funds. They
Right.
don't have anyone to go in the community that looks like us to spread word. And so, like, making those relationships happen so that we can make sure that our people are prepared is everything.
Quick on the volunteer thing. Listen, I told somebody like, hey man, like you need to go volunteer. They were like, man, I ain't gonna volunteer. Them people gotta pay me. And I looked at them and I say, well, what are you worth right now? Let's take a look at your skill set. Let's take a look at your resume. And when we break that down, no, you should be paying them to volunteer with them. Like let's be real. Because a lot of times we be so focused on the short term fix, the immediate need, we salary cap ourselves. Listen, when Corey and Johnny got me into volunteering, and when I got into volunteering, I made connections and relationships that I leveraged into employment and business opportunities down the road, and it was natural, like because them people got to, even though they knew like they got to know me outside of what you might read on the internet or seen on
Mm-hmm.
TV. They got to know Devin, the person, and they bought into that. So I agree with you. Like you're right, and I think that we need again go back to what works. We need to like reframe our environment and really talk about what support is, because I think we've been conditioned to think along the lines of support as one particular thing, right?
Yes.
So I may not be able to support you financially, but I may have an ear to hear, or I may have a warm meal for you to eat, or I may have some clothes that ain't like worn all the way out that you could wear. So
Yeah.
support look different. Um, a guy that I know, he passed away. He lost his life in a violent nature. I was working, I was like 28, 29 years old, making $7 an hour, and I had to walk across town to the job because my license was suspended. And I knew if I got caught driving where I was going, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Support for
Definitely.
him was when he would see me, he would pick me up and bring me to the neighborhood. And I needed that. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? In our communities, and it could be the trauma, what we experience, the burdens, the financial issues. But I see other communities. My cousin and I was talking about it, where other communities, man, these kids will go to college and come back home and live with their family until they're ready to buy a house,
Mm-hmm.
right? If they trying to start a business, like people in the family or a community, even we used to do it like back in the day, like would pitch in because they had the opportunity to make it
Yeah.
on the condition that they actually come back. And
Yeah.
I think we stopped coming back. And coming back may not mean coming back to live in the community. It may not mean that.
Mm-hmm.
It may mean volunteering at the after school program. So this little kid that's playing video games can understand that he can actually design video games.
And what I don't think, so we don't give ourselves enough credit for, we all have something special we bring to the table, and we all will give back and can give back in a different way. Like, you may not be on the train breaking up fights. You may not be on the train like, yo, tell me why you got that thing on you like that. Fix it. Like, meaning, got a gun or something on. I'm like, yo, come here, real quick. Sit there. And they, looking at me like, what this crazy lady want? I'm like, fix it. Or, like little things like that. That might not be your outward way. That might not be who you are as a person. But so you mean to tell me that you can't take 4 hours of PTO to go volunteer at a workforce development program?
Right.
You can't take 4 hours to make a decision that you're going to pull all your friends' clothes together that they don't wear, bundle them up and take them and just drop them off at a workforce development program or a shelter or something. Like, there's always a way that we can give back our time or our resources so that somebody else can have a come up. And we don't
Right.
necessarily do that.
And watch this. If we start doing that and holding each other accountable, like I'm a dad, so
Mm-hmm.
brothers that I know that got children, like I hold them accountable. And people
Yeah.
hold me accountable. They be like, where your daughter at? What your daughter doing? How your daughter doing? Like we need that. We need to understand that it, you could be my friend. Like really, we don't need no more yes men or yes women. Like
Mm-hmm.
real friendship mean you pulling my coat, telling me the things that I need to hear, even when I don't want to hear them. You
Agreed.
know what I'm saying? Like, like we need to do that. We need to understand that we can really agree to disagree and still have each other best interests at heart. Just it's a lot of work.
I'll
But
give
watch
you.
this.
Go ahead.
We talked, right? And we started off talking about snitching and black on black crime. But because we was talking about solutions, we walked the whole, we walked way down the street from that. And I think that needs to be multiplied in our on our community level and our leadership level. Like, man, let's walk down the street towards these solutions.
Yeah. I think a lot of time we get hung up on what has happened and what has occurred. So even when I put up the little blurb about tonight's conversation, it's like, yeah, we're going to talk about what about black on black crime. Cool. We know that it caused like a lot of systemic racism. We know like there's causes with us, living in poverty and the environment and stuff like that. But what do we do in order to take control as individuals in order to provide some solutions to it, right? And I think it comes back to what you just said, individual accountability and then holding each other accountable for who we know we are and how we know we can give back. I'll give you an example. So like I was done with my people. Like at one point I was like, yo, don't sign me up. Don't call me. I am drained. Just send me the people that you already know want to get this work. Like and or the kid that look like they have a bright future. Just give them my personal number. They could call me. But as far as the masses, I'm done. Right. And I had a conversation on the same day, right? So first I went to my older cousin and I was like, yo, I'm done. I need a break. I'm tired. I'm about to go vacation somewhere. I need some rest. My cousin said, She said, so let me tell you what you're getting ready to do. She said, I need you to, the kind of rest that you're going to get right now is like when you go in the bathroom, you splash your face with a little water, you shake yourself up, you pull up your breast, and then you look and say some sort of affirmations like, let's get to it, and then you get back to work. Like, this is not the time in your life where you get to pause like that. Like, get back to doing what you do and what you do well, right? So then I ain't like her answer, Devin. So I went to my dad and I was like, yo, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of your people. Da-da-da-da. I just want to break. I don't want to be known. Don't want to be seen. I'm about to fall all the way back. And my father was like, there's certain people that just don't get the opportunity to do that. And you're one of them. So figure it out. Like pretty much you talking reckless right now. This ain't even who you are. Like tough it up. Like there was no, oh, come on in. No, it'll be fine. No, toughen up and do what you're supposed to do. And that
Hey,
was the conversation. But that's that level of accountability that we need, right? But they were also able to give me that level of accountability. One, because I've shared with them the things that I want to do. Two, because they've seen me walk in my lane and do what I do. And three, because I'm surrounded by people who are not going to accept anything less from themselves or from others. And I was the other that day.
right, right. That's that's key. Like that's I don't like talking about my story. I don't. Um, I don't because it brings stuff up for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it was a lot of loss in those years that I endured. A lot of pain that I endured and that I put on other people that at this age, had I thought different, I think a lot of situations I would have handled different. So I don't want to talk about it. My condition was, and I made this condition with my mother, if it'll help somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing how things are going is helping people. So
Yeah.
that's why I talk about it. But I had some people want me to talk and just talk about during the time. But I said, nah, I said, I got to tell the whole story. Like, I got to walk it all the way through the redemption because I don't need people to think that it stops right there.
Agreed.
Because it's somebody doing time right now that they may had a cure for cancer in their mind. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like they may design some kind of like they might hold the key to infrastructure, so I don't need them to give up. And then on the flip side, the role that my family played, I need people to know like don't give up on them just yet. Right? You cannot agree with what they do. You cannot want to be around with what they're doing right now and still not give up on them. You know what
Agreed.
I'm saying?
I do know.
Yeah. So that's why I do it. I think that's very, very important. But at the same time, that's what pushes me to go further. Like I've seen other cats um that have made leaps and bounds, and I hit them up and I'll be like, keep going. Because the further they go, the further I know that I can go. It was a thing in the joint. And some people don't like to share their release date because people are the haters, like the real
Sabotaging.
haters,
Yep.
yeah, they want to jam the date, right?
Yep.
And this what I used to be happy when I saw people go home, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because I had a release date, and I knew every time I saw somebody else go home, I knew they were still releasing people.
True.
So if if you getting blessed, if you growing, that means I can grow too. The opportunity is still there. My homeboy said, "Bruh, I want your cup to run over," and I was like, "Why?" He said, "Because I could be on the plate around the cup, and I catch the overflow."
Agreed. And like, but it's honoring too the fact that I need my cup to run over, because I was on someone else's plate, right? And so I caught it, and because when I caught it, I took it. Then I figured out how to get my own cup because it was just, in abundance. So I got my
Right,
own cup and then put it on my own sauce, and then it start running over because it's contagious, right? Success is contagious. And so, like I say all the time, that sometimes people just need a little bit of hope, and they need that somebody need to know that somebody cares. And
right,
so if you can be that somebody, and if you can give them just an ounce of hope, if whether that's through your story or through like your actions, yo, it goes a long way. And it's funny because I don't really like sharing either. Like it's not my thing. Like I am an introvert by nature. I prefer to be in the back of the room. I prefer you not to know my name. All of those things, right? But I got challenged with the same thing, Devin. I got challenged early on. If you tell your story and nothing happens, or if you tell the things that you've been through and nothing happens, then you don't have to share. But we know what happens, right? You start sharing and you start talking, and people start coming to you and telling you, like, yo, when you said this little piece, I was able to do this. And then you start to see the value in being able to authentically share all of the parts in me. And so here's the caveat to that too is I don't care what y'all think. So like the people that already got this level of really I don't care, y'all need to be sharing more, because at the end of the day, you don't have a heaven or hell to put me in.
right.
At the end of the day, no matter what I share with you, can't stop anything that's going to come my way or my blessings, right? And
Right.
so that's why I think it's super critical. But we are at 9:09, right? So if there's one thing that you want people to take away from our conversation tonight, what would that be?
I would say be bold and be responsible. Like that thing that's in your heart that's pulling at you, do it. You don't know who out here waiting on you to become who you was always meant to be.
Love it. And so if I were to say something, I would say to step outside of yourself and realize that this is all bigger than you. And so, like, if we were to recognize, like, that we don't really have the luxury of sitting at home while our people are dying or are in situations that they're not sure how to get out of, they don't have a blueprint to. If we would recognize sometimes that it's bigger than us, then we would get out of our feelings and we would start volunteering more. We would start talking to that hard headed ass niece and nephew that you have that doesn't listen, if we got out of ourselves and our own ego. So step outside of yourself, do things that make you uncomfortable so that you can make a difference, because it's not about you. Got one more thing. How we end every segment. This is not necessarily about this topic, right? But I need to know one thing that you're ranting about this week and one thing that you're raving about this week. One thing that's making you like say yes, and another one is like pissing you off. Which one?
All right. The thing that's pissing me off is to hear people voicing their opinions on whether like Black Lives Matter, black or black crime, right, on the grand scale of things, and don't speak to their neighbors.
Mm, yeah,
Like, like if you feel like that, like walk it how you talk it. Start treating the people that you encounter every day with the love and respect that you want other people to be treated with,
that's
right?
good. Uh-huh.
Um, and what I'm excited about,
Yeah, what you raving about, what you excited about.
I'm excited about the opportunity. Watch this, because I've been facing a lot of challenges, right? And they say it get darkest before daylight.
It does, definitely does.
So I got some daylight on the way. And I'm just positioning myself to be ready for it.
Love it, love it. The one thing I'm ranting about, oh, this has been big, Devin, for me, like huge for me. Like when I hear and see all of these videos where we're encouraging people to go get weapons, go get a weapon because you're gonna have to learn how to defend yourself and you need to be able to shoot and stuff like that. Now I'm not saying you don't need to defend yourself, but I'm just saying everybody ain't a killer, even if they're pushed. Like so,
Right.
like, can we stop making it seem like you just go get a gun, you fire off, and then like if you're in a situation, you take a man's life, you're gonna be the same? You're not gonna be the same. Some of y'all gonna fire this weapon off if you have to be in this situation, and you ain't gonna be able to live with yourself for the rest of your life. Like, stop
That's right.
making it like
That's right.
shooting someone or harming someone or killing someone under any circumstances is easy, because it's not. I could line up a whole lot of people. I ain't gonna get no names though, but it's not. Like, you are a different person once you pull that trigger, and that doesn't even mean that you checked anyone's life. It means that you landed what you shot, and it's also karma associated with it, regardless of what the circumstances are. What am I raving about? I got family time in last week. Like, so I'm at the stage that I have young adults now, so they don't need me as much. Like, and they also are in a different state. I'm in Georgia now. They're still in Maryland, and my mom came down, and I got to be a whole spoiled brat. I still got snacks in my cupboard and my, and downstairs, just to know that I ain't have to buy them. Like, I was a spoiled brat last week, and I got to get all of that family time in and catch up with the youngins. And I'm watching them like maneuver their way through life. My niece just started a business. I'm super excited. She called me, she called China to get vendors and all of this all on her own. So like, yo, I'm dumb excited about that. But the family time, because sometimes I really do need it.
That's what's up.
All right. So thank you everybody for taking the time to tune in, share, like, hit replay. Devin, where could the folks find you?
Devin D. Coleman, like on the screen. Devin D. Coleman everywhere. At Devin D. Coleman, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and devindcoleman.com. That's the website.
Love it. Talk to you guys next week.